I'm Christine, and today we're gonna be talking about my favorite standalones of all time. If you're not aware, this year I put out my debut novel, which is a standalone itself. It's called Unnie Voters. It's a rom-com coming-of-age story about a girl who studies abroad in London. The link's in the description. So today I'm going to be counting down my top 10 favorite standalones of all time. I have 2 honorable mentions, and I was lying, I actually have a top 11 favorite standalones of all time. I've done my favorite book series of all time, and people are asking me to do a new one. It hasn't changed, dudes. The older you get, the harder it is to break into somebody's top 10. And I find that the standalones that make it, that crash into my top, are the ones that I not only loved, but also had an effect on my psyche and changed the way I think. When I did my top 10 favorite series, I felt like they were pretty predictable. I don't think my top 10 standalones are as predictable. I mean, you can place bets if you think that you know my top 10, 11 favorite standalones are gonna be, and see how predictable I am, and give yourself 2 points for everyone you get right. But I don't think you're gonna be able to get them because I don't talk about them as much. That's part of the beauty of the standalone. You read it, you devour it, it becomes a part of you, and you're done. You don't have to remember all the little details before you get into the next one. So the further I get into adulthood, the more I appreciate a standalone. It's hard to pick up a book in a series after a year of reading tons of other books and remembering exactly what happened. If I haven't made a book talk about a fantasy book in a series, I feel lost. Sometimes for the first 100 pages of a new book in that fantasy series. Let's do this! My first honorable mention is Landline by Rainbow Rowell. I feel like very few people talk about Rainbow Rowell's Landline. I loved this novel. I feel like I have to reread it. I read it once. It was when I first moved to California. I really, really enjoyed it. And the more I've thought about it throughout the years, the more I've loved it. It's one of those that really grows on you. And I think if I read it now, I'd like it even more because it is an adult book. It's dealing with marriage. The older you get, the more you start to appreciate themes and life lessons that come with stuff like marriage. The lead character is a writer for a TV show. There's a little bit of magic in here, which I love. And the other book on my honorable mentions list is Anna and the French Kiss by Stephanie Perkins. I couldn't not have this in here. It didn't make my top 10, but this book, I think, was my first contemporary novel. John Green recommended it in a video. I picked it up immediately, and the rest is history. I've read this 3 times now. The first time, I was like, that was really fun. I enjoyed it. It was cute. But the second time, I was like, this is my everything. I love this so much. The more I read this book, the more I appreciated how giddy it made me, how excited and filled with joy I was with the turn of every page. If for some reason you don't know what Anna and the French Kiss is about, it's a girl named Anna, and she gets this French kiss. No, it's a girl named Anna, and she goes to school in Paris for her senior year of high school. She meets this boy. She lives in Paris, and it's great. And now in the top 10, top 10, except it's top 11. Lock in your bets, ladies and gentlemen. Here we go. Coming in at number 11, A Very Large Expansive Sea by Tahira Mafi. I had such a wonderful time reading this book. I love how real and raw it is. I love the love story. I love the journey of our main character. This is my favorite Tahira Mafi book. I'm so excited for her to hopefully write more contemporary in the future. This is about a Muslim teenager who's in high school during the time right after 9/11. And if you haven't read it yet, I highly recommend. I read this in 1 sitting. It's great. Coming in spot number 10 is none other than Verity by Colleen Hoover. This is a thriller. I started reading this book at 11 o'clock at night. I tried to go to bed at 3. I couldn't stop reading it, but also I was really scared. It was super creepy, but in the best way. I didn't know what to expect going into it, and it's much better going into it not knowing what to expect. I did do a book talk about this if you want to see me talk about everything, and when you finish this book, you want to talk. If you finished it and you want to talk about it, please check out that book talk so we can discuss in the comments. Thank you. This is now one of my favorite Colleen Hoover books. It's very hard for me to pick a favorite coho because I love them all. And it's just a scale of how favorite they are. But Verity just shot up to the top of the list. I'd be so down to read another coho horror thriller romance. At number 9 on the list, I have What If It's Us by Becky Albertalli and Adam Silvera. This book warmed my soul. It was so cute. I can't wait for this to become a movie. It has to become a movie someday. It's perfect for Netflix. It's such an adorable rom-com between these 2 boys. Are they in college? It's a summer romance. They run into each other one day at a post office. They start talking while they're online, and they have really great chemistry. And then after one of them drops off the package that they're waiting online for, they just leave. And that's it. They don't exchange any numbers. And both of them are like, wow, that was a really great interaction. I wish I got that person's number. It's an adorable, heartwarming, missed connection story. If you haven't read it yet, buy it and set it aside for a day when you need it. A day, that's what I do with all my happy-go-lucky rom-com books. I keep them, I store them, I put them on the shelf and I hoard them for the days when I need them. I just remember giggling incessantly reading this. The Unnie Voters by Christine Riccio. This book was the best! I don't want to hype it up too much because I want you to go in with just normal expectations. But I laughed so much while reading this book. It was so much fun. It's a hate to love story. Rom-com movie-wise, I would compare it to The Proposal. Except I didn't really love The Proposal movie. I loved this book. There's so many excellent scenes and moments. I shall forever treasure it. It's my favorite Christina Riccio book. It shot right up into my favorites of all time. This is a perfect book to save for a rainy, down day. You can put it right next to What If It's Us and start your happy making collection. Yes, a lot of my favorite books are happy makers because I like to read books that make me happy. With book number 7, we pivot a little bit. If you did bet on what you thought was going to be on this top 10, I don't know if you would have thought that this was going to be on it. I wouldn't have thought that this was going to be on it. Who would have thought that this depressing depressorson would be my favorite Colleen Hoover book? Not me, not me. It's one of the saddest Colleen Hoover books, but it's excellent. Colleen Hoover writes books that have really intense emotional arcs and issues, but also really funny dialogue. I love that mashup. I love how it makes me feel so extreme in all the directions. Now this direction is definitely more sad, less rom-commy, but it really wheedled its way into my psyche. It's more of an adult novel than a lot of Colleen's books. A lot of them I think would be considered new adult because usually they're in the early 20s, but she's a grown married adult in a lot of this book, and we're dealing with, again, more adult-ish issues, just issues that come up in your life when you're older, and it just made such an impression on me. I've read so many amazing standalones that I love, but not all of them will leave their imprint on me forever because maybe I didn't read it at a time in my life where I needed it the most, and those are the books that really stick with you when you have that magic moment where you pick up a book that is perfect for the headspace you're in right at that moment. This book, I had no idea going into it that it was gonna hit me like it did. I was expecting a much happier arc, and it's not like a complete downer. It has a hopefulness to it, but it is sad. Okay, change of tone. Coming in at number 6, The Martian by Andy Weir. The Martian is a science fiction novel that feels like real. You might have seen the movie with Matt Damon. I love this book, and the movie leaves out a lot of amazing, great moments. When you see this, you don't think it's gonna be hilarious. You don't think this is like a comedy on Mars, like a one-man comedy show, but it is. I had just the most fun, and I learned so much science. There's so much science in this book, but also it's so fun and it's so accessible to the non-scientist mind, me. I'm a Ravenclaw, I love to learn, I'm a big comedy fan, I love to laugh, combined perfectly to make one wonderful masterpiece. Mark Watney is so much fun to hang out with. That's why he survived so long on a planet by himself. You need someone in there for you, and he had himself. Coming in at number 5, They Both Die at the End by Adam Silvera. We're working off the idea that 24 hours before you die, you get a phone call. It's like the weather forecast. Like, we know somehow who's gonna be dying in the next 24 hours, and they all get a call just to let them know, like, hey, you have 24 hours to live. Beep, bye. And so there's an app in this world where if you get the call, you can find someone else who got the call to spend your last day with, so you don't have to be alone on your last day. Both of these boys get the call, and they have this whirlwind day together. It's a story about love and making every moment count. It's so well written and thought-provoking. There's so many great conversations, and afterward, I was thinking about it 24/7 for at least a week. It is a bold, lovely, and haunting story of loss, hope, and the redeeming power of friendship, for sure. And it's gonna be a series on HBO. What? So excited. Coming in at number 4. I love this book so much. I'll Give You the Sun by Jandy Nelson. This book is magnificent. I feel like this is another one of those underappreciated, under-talked about contemporary books. I just always talk about how I read this whole book on a flight, and I spent the whole time crying, basically, and listening to Civil Wars. And it was just the perfect soundtrack to this book. It's about twins who have lost their mom, and we alternate hearing from the boy twin and hearing from the girl twin. And you hear from them at different times in their life. Jenny Nelson paints these gorgeous pictures with words. I just want to frame so many things she says because it's perfect. I want to reread this. It's hard when you have such a great experience with a book the first time you read it. It's hard to work up the courage to read it again because will it be as great as the first time when you had the perfect soundtrack in the perfect setting where you had nothing else to do but read, you know? I'll never be able to recreate that, and I love having that memory. That's also what makes certain books special, the way you read them. The circumstances physically around you in that moment. I read this in one sitting. This is a big book. It's intimidatingly beautiful how well this is written. We're down to the final three. We're down to the final three. What do you think they're going to be? At number 3, I have Lola and the Boy Next Door by Stephanie Perkins. Everyone always talks about Anne and the French Kiss by Stephanie Perkins, but I always preferred Lola and the Boy Next Door. And I don't know if it's because I read Anne and the French Kiss the first time in a broken up fashion, and Lola and the Boy Next Door, I bought it and read it in like a second. I don't think it is, because I read them both again and I still love Lola and the Boy Next Door more. This is my favorite Stephanie Perkins book. It's a love story about a girl in high school and the boy who lives next door named Cricket, and it's so sweet and so happy making. And I love that I never completely remember everything that happens in this book. There's so many things I love about it that I start to forget the scenes. It's like when you watch Gilmore Girls. There's so much amazing dialogue that you can't possibly remember all the jokes. And then you watch it again and it's kind of brand new again. Number 2 is Fangirl by Rainbow Rowell. This is the first book that I ever really was like, that main character is me. That's a really strong, powerful thing, that sort of connection. And I've read so many books before this, and in so many characters I could see bits and pieces that I related to that was like, yes, I feel that, I feel that, I feel that. This was like, that's me. And I've never realized that someone was experiencing emotions that were so similar. It was the first story I read about a girl in college. She's a freshman. She loves a series that's very reminiscent of Harry Potter. She writes fan fiction. She's waiting for the final book. It was such an emotional journey. This book is wonderful. Rainbow Rowell is wonderful. I love everything she writes. If you haven't read it, maybe check it out. And the final book on my list, the big kahuna, number 1. Just One Day by Gail Forman. I have talked about this book a lot in the past and in the present. I read this book at the perfect time where I needed this story. I was at peak quarter life crisis. I was living at home with my family after college, trying to do all these things, and I just felt stuck. This book turned my mindset around. It empowered me in all the ways I needed to be empowered. You go into this book thinking it's about this romance, but it's really about coming into your own, how much you can accomplish when you put your mind to it. I didn't know this was my favorite until I started thinking about like how much I think about this book and how much it changed the way I look at books in general and stories and storytelling and writing and just so many things. You know, I can't even begin to put into words the kick in the butt it gave me to push myself. And those, ladies and gents, were my top standalone books of all time. Of all time! Did you take bets? Did you get any right? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to know what your top 10 favorite standalones are. My name's Christine. The standalone that I've written is called Again But Better. I make videos every Tuesday. I'll see you next time. Goodbye!